Greetings, this is Willie Muhammad, and I have a testimony.
God came to us to seek and to save that which was lost. He raised a man from among us.
He, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, laid the foundation. What I'm doing is something that comes from him through me, and the thing that he uses in me to do the work is my faith in him and the word that he taught. To produce men and women who wanted to clean up their life and build an independent nation for the glory of God.
Today we have with us another helper of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. He hails from the city of Louisville, Kentucky. He's a student minister there. He's a father, he's a husband, he's a businessman, and a good brother. And I can personally testify of that.
I have with me a tennis ball. I like to do practical demonstrations. Now, mathematically, if I want this ball to bounce really high, can I drop it really low?
No, sir.
If I want it to bounce really high, I gotta go up high and drop it, right?
Sir.
I can't drop it down here, sisters, because if I drop it low, guess what's gonna happen? It's gonna bounce low. So if in my prayer and in my goals, I'm saying, Allah, I want big money. I want big success. What you have prayed and asked for is, God, take me to the top and drop me. Huh? So, but then I complain when God puts me in the process to give me what I ask him for. Huh? All praise is due to Allah. Islam is mathematics.
So thank you, my brother. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for joining us today.
Alaikum salam. That was refreshing seeing that clip from when we visited the great city of New Orleans.
Definitely, man. And that's definitely where that clip came from. So I'd like to jump right into our interviews, man. So let's first start. You know, I always like to allow the believers who come on to share their personal testimonies of how they became aware of the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and how eventually they decided to join. So let's hear your personal testimony.
Well, it was 1989. I started studying, and I started hanging out with a few brothers that were in the Nation of Islam. Louisville did not have a study group or an active mosque at the time. There was just one brother in particular. His name was Brother Halim. And Brother Halim was in the first resurrection. And we met him, and a group of us would go to his house and study Message to the Black Man. And that was my first introduction. And we started a study group at that point, and I eventually became the study group coordinator in around January of 1991. Actually became registered in 1990.
The message that you just said, man, you know, I want to be a part of this, because as I know from our talks that you come from a background where your father is actually a pastor.
Right. Yeah, my father is a Baptist preacher in upstate New York. My grandfather, may Allah be pleased with him, was a pastor, and he taught at the seminary here in Louisville. So, you know, it was a bit challenging because, you know, I was afraid what my dad, you know, would think. And then when I was studying it, my grandfather was still alive at the time, but I never had a discussion with him about me becoming a part of Islam. But I get a lot of support from my parents, both my mom and my dad, you know, with the work that we do to help the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
And in addition to that, you know, and as you're talking about your help of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, you know, how long have you served in the position of student minister in the city of Louisville, and how did you end up becoming appointed to that position, and were there any fears that you had to overcome when you were asked to do so?
Well, I was 24 years old at the time. I'm 54 now. I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I didn't know the many trials that would be ahead of me. At the time, I was running an organization called BIRD, which stands for Brothers in the Right Direction. I was already a public speaker. I had already, spoken at some high schools, colleges, and other, things like that. I just didn't have that spiritual, connection at the time. But I wanted to speak and to share. I guess my reluctance was I didn't feel like I was worthy, to be an example for other brothers and sisters. So that was my reluctancy in the beginning. But it's been a beautiful trial. It's been a beautiful journey.
Mm. And then as you relate to that, and you talked about your reluctancy, I know being in these positions, man, there's a lot that we learn. What are some of the lessons that you have learned in striving to work in this capacity?
Well, one of the biggest lessons I've learned is just how to deal with people. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is a master at dealing with people. God has blessed us to do work in the community, to develop relationships in all walks of life. And but just observing how to just handle the different types of people that have come in the mosque throughout the years, I've been able, with God's grace, to convert some of that energy to the business world and to be able to set up a business for myself, to provide for my family, and to employ about 40 people across a few different states. So just learning how to handle people, how to handle adversity, and the thing that we're running from is the very thing that's going to make us a master at what we're asking God for.
How, what influence and I guess even preparation of you being raised by your grandfather being a pastor, your father being a pastor, is a pastor, how has that helped you in your serving as a student minister in Louisville?
Well, it's something, because when you ask me these questions, Brother Willie, it's like a real-time auditing session. When the minister first came, he came to Louisville in '97, and he said, "Brother, you have a head start because of your background." The minister says things to you, and you don't really understand it until many years later. I do have from growing up in a spiritual environment. There are certain things I catch on to a little quicker in terms of Bible. I feel like I'm very strong biblically, and that's just something in my DNA. I haven't grown up with my father. My parents are divorced. And I haven't lived with my dad since I was 9 years old. But when I went to New York the last time and visited my father, we get up every Sunday morning and do the exact same thing. He goes somewhere, sits and has coffee, and I have coffee, and we get our message together. And it was just something how you don't really realize certain things are in your DNA.
Wow, that is interesting. And you talked about your ability, and you're very popular there in the city of Louisville. How are you able to build those relationships with people in the community?
Well, that's an excellent question. I think we build the relationships, Brother Willie, by understanding and respecting other people's realities. For example, when I deal with pastors, I try to understand their realities, their limitations. They have tithers in the church. Some churches have a board of directors. Some churches don't have a board. So you have to understand people's realities. So I try to go sit and listen with people and talk with them. For example, I have a good friend who's an attorney that I developed a relationship with. I couldn't ever really get an audience with him, and I met him one day at the YMCA when I was working out. So what we did, I walk in the mornings. I tell you how I take my walks, but we would just meet early in the morning and go to the mall and walk. So I could get free legal advice from him. He would support certain things that we did, but we would get up to walk from 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning, because when you're dealing with busy people, as you know, Brother Willie, once our day gets started, we don't know what's coming next. So I just try to understand other people's realities.
And How would you describe the overall response to our people there in the city of Louisville to the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad?
Well, they're very receptive. Louisville has never had a mosque, even though this is the home of Muhammad Ali, and our mosque where it is located, where it was located prior to COVID, it was 2 blocks from Muhammad Ali's childhood home. The interesting thing about Louisville, it's very Muslim friendly from a political standpoint. But when you start trying to attach the people to a program, you will get a little bit of resistance, but people here love the minister. And in fact, when we, inshallah, when we share about the minister's visit to Louisville during the funeral of the Muhammad Ali, we can share some examples of just the love and respect that the people here in the city do have for the minister. But the believers here in Louisville love the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. We also have another study group in Lexington, Kentucky. The believers in the state of Kentucky love the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, as well as the people.
And I know also, as we talked about, I've seen this on social media. Can you explain this whole phenomenon as it relates to the Kentucky Derby and Black folks? So I see, people are flocking there for the Kentucky Derby. Like, what is our interaction with it as Black people? Are we going to the actual Derby and looking at the horses, or what?
No, most Black people don't go to the Derby. It's a party time. In the city of Louisville during Derby, our families and friends come in throughout the country. It's cookouts. People, it's a lot of family time. There's a lot of events. They have Derby galas, parties. The nightclubs here have special Derby events and parties. It's more of a festive time for Black folks. The young people cruise up and down streets. You have a lot of street vendors. But then out when you get around the Churchill Downs area, it's a totally different reality. That's where the Derby is ran. It's a whole nother reality out there where the Derby takes place, where you have the more affluent people coming in from out of town and participating in the Derby as far as viewing that race.
And it's interesting, we have 2 more minutes before we go to our break, that you said that the city of Louisville never had a mosque. Do you know anything about the early history of the Nation of Islam in Louisville, like in regards to who was probably one of the ministers there, even though they didn't have a mosque, or are you the first minister that would?
Well, I would say, but before me here in Louisville, we have a brother, William 2X at the time, Willie Muhammad, and he's still active in our study group. So I came in after him. Prior to that, David Bacha from Cincinnati, who was the minister over Mosque number 5 in Cincinnati. And the believers there can give you a lot of history on David Bacha, but he was over this Louisville, Cincinnati area, Dayton area, and many of the believers here in Louisville at the time drove to Cincinnati. Cincinnati's an hour and 35 minutes from here. They drove to Cincinnati for Sunday meetings, Wednesday meetings, for FOI class, and they thought nothing of it. Of course, there was no pagers and cell phones in those days, but Louisville was basically a satellite location under Mosque 5 in Cincinnati.
Thank you for that history. So we're approaching our first break. So let us pause for these announcements from our sponsors. We thank you all for tuning in to I Have a Testimony. Please share this broadcast, brothers and sisters, and share your thoughts with us in the comments section below. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps us to highlight solutions for a brighter tomorrow. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Asiatic Minds, online education, helping our children to discover their God-given skills, gifts, talents, and passion that will allow them to see their greatness, as well as the greatness of our people, and upon discovering that greatness, infusing them with the desire to use it for the betterment of themselves, their families, our people, and the world. Call now, 502-219-4848.
This is Sister Sajda Muhammad. We are proud to announce that the Sajda House commemorative Elijah coins are finally here. This priceless heirloom, made from recycled copper from the messenger's home, is now available at sajdahouse.com.
The hashtag Bank Black social media campaign made strides not only in revolutionizing how we bank, but also how we think. The movement inspired thousands of African Americans across the country to transfer or deposit millions of dollars into Black-owned banks. These are banks that will invest in urban communities, employ African Americans, support Black businesses, and inspire Black home ownership. This is a very proud moment for our culture as we are taking small, but significant, steps towards building Black power through Black wealth.
Thank you for tuning in to NNV News. Please share your thoughts with us in the comments section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel, National Network View. This is Clifton Muhammad with NNVnews.com.
On June 12, 2016, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan delivered a lecture titled, quote, "The Life and Times of Muhammad Ali," end of quote. One of the many giants made by the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. Even as a musician, the minister played a role in the resurrection of the then known Cassius Clay.
I wrote a song. Brother Malcolm was writing in the Amsterdam News, and he wrote a column called "A White Man's Heaven is a Black Man's Hell." Do you think that's true today? That's about 59 years ago I wrote the song. And it was an underground movement hit in the 60s. I wrote it based upon the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
So, Brother Jerald, we know that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan was not allowed to speak during the funeral services of our dear brother Muhammad Ali, though others were able to speak. You were in the hotel with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and were able to witness how the minister responded to such a slight. So can you share with us his response and his overall spirit?
Wow. It's something, brother. That photo that you just showed, that was from the Janazah, which was at the fairgrounds in Louisville. That was from the the Janazah. And I remember when the minister came out, he was behind the curtain, and he came out to come up to the casket. There were police around the other side, but when he walked out, you saw them kind of almost buck up, like we didn't know, hey, what's going on here. But when they had the memorial service, this was at the Yum Center, which is where the University of Louisville basketball team plays their basketball games. It seats 22,000. It was very difficult to even get a seat in the arena. I had to call the Louisville's mayor's office. There were people in the city council that couldn't get in, so I was trying to get tickets. The tickets were free, but it was just limited seating. But I was trying to get tickets for some of the ministers and dignitaries that were coming in across the nation. But I remember sitting in the hotel room prior to the night of the main event, and we still weren't sure whether the minister was going to speak or not. And I remember we were in his room, and the minister said, "Brother, watch them sit your brother over in a corner somewhere, not allow me to speak." But he said, "But you cannot hide the light." He said, "You can't hide the light." So the next day we were there in the Yum Center. I can remember it plainly now. I was sitting with Minister Ishmael, Minister Jeffrey, and Brother Salarius. We were sitting very close and up above. The minister was on the floor off into the corner where they sat him. And they did not allow the minister to speak. But as God is my witness, I saw Arnold Schwarzenegger rushed through the crowd, but prior to that start of the memorial service with his security, bowed to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. He asked to get a picture with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. I saw Spike Lee. I saw Don King. I saw Dave Chappelle. All of these people coming directly to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And it was something just to sit there and watch, and he just sat there so humble. And just to paint a picture of how big this was, we were at the Galt House Hotel, which was the main hotel where a lot of dignitaries were staying. All the hotels in Louisville were sold out. People came from across the country. I believe it was a president or king from Turkey, but he approached the hotel we were staying in, and he had made a proposition to the hotel. He said he wanted a whole floor, and he would pay everybody on the floor $1,000 to check out.
Wow.
And to give that floor to him. So I packed up my bags that night. No, I'm just joking. So, but I don't know that the hotel allowed him to do that. But it was just to see the Secret Service. And at the time, I didn't have a FOI captain at the time. And I got to work very closely with the E team and just to solve what they do. And just over the phone, how they walked me through, we were able to get a police escort because of our relationships. I said, Brother Melvin at the time, I said, I can get the meeting. So Student Minister Jerald, who's, out of Cincinnati, who's a former captain for 20-something years in Cincinnati, he and I went into the meeting and met with the assistant chief of police, and I remember just sitting in the car on the speakerphone with Brother Sadiq and Brother Jerald. He just told us what to say, and he said, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan doesn't want to be a burden on the city right now and put a strain on your resources. That you're being stretched thin with the passing of Muhammad Ali. And basically, but if you could accommodate us, and again, I learned diplomacy, how to dress. I was told what type of tie to wear going into the meeting. I mean, just suggestions. And I watched how it worked. So God blessed us. Louisville, Kentucky borders Indiana, and we can get to Indiana. I mean, our mosque in Louisville is a 10-minute drive to get to Indiana. But we were able to coordinate with the police to pick the minister up his caravan in Indiana and cross the bridge from Indiana and take him safely into Kentucky and pull up at the Galt House Hotel. So just to watch that, and I tell you what was something. All the police, the assistant police chief at that time had assigned certain officers just to work with the E team while they were there. So if they needed anything. So I watched all of them escort the minister in. They got the minister in the room. And then as soon as everybody left, all these police officers pulled out their cell phones and they wanted pictures with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
You were there and to witness that, because many people, because they may see the passionate lectures by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan where he's calling out police brutality and police abuses. But many people don't realize the great respect that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has for not only Black people, but anybody who puts on that badge and that uniform. Sure. So can you talk about that as well?
Sure. We're taught to respect authority. So that's what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan teaches us. And it's study guide 14 in our study guide is entitled Respect for Authority. So, the minister has great respect for law enforcement, and we're taught to obey the law, as long as it doesn't conflict with our religion. But it's that mutual respect that blessed us to be able to have the cooperation with the Louisville Police Department to a degree at that time. That blessed us to make that trip a pleasant one, and more importantly, a safe trip to get the minister in and out of the city.
You talked about how when the minister was actually, they pushed the minister to the side, right? And as a way off. But you talk about how various celebrities, you know, Dave Chappelle, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and others actually came there to greet the minister and take photographs. From your perspective, why do you think that they did that in light of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan being a man that is continuously misrepresented and falsely portrayed in the media? Like, why do you think that didn't stop them from coming to greet the minister and want to take photos with them?
Well, I think that white folks, they don't fear the backlash as much. So they're not worried about that Farrakhan litmus test. They can just maybe apologize and then it just goes away. Where, you know, when our people stand up with the minister, they try to punish them and treat us like children and teach us a lesson. But white folks also respect people who stand up and speak their mind. You know, me being a business owner and working with different you know, vendors in the business that I'm in. You know, I have an insurance brokerage where we do, you know, health insurance, and I've dealt with major corporations. And I was in a meeting recently. They came to my office and was discussing a particular partnership, and meeting was over, and one of them had left the room, and the guy stood up in the conference room in my office and said, "We were on your Facebook page, and we saw you on there with the Honorable with Louis Farrakhan." And I said, "Yes, sir, you did." I just sat there like that. I said, "Yes, sir, you most certainly did." And I smiled, and he said, "Well, hey, that's pretty cool, man. That's cool, cool." You know, but it's, you know, when we stand up, you don't have to be, you know, disrespectful, but when you just stand up like a man, all men respect people can draw a line in the sand and say, "This is what I stand for." So, and I learned that from observing and watching the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And I haven't always been blessed to be in private meetings with the minister, and, you know, I have been blessed to be around the minister's son. But what I've learned and what I've observed, I think for me, it's how his approach, the way, you know, Jesus said, "I'm the truth, the life, and the way." It's the minister's way. It's his approach, while he gets the outcome sometimes that we don't get.
Yes, sir. We appreciate those responses, man. So we're coming up on our next break. So let us pause for these announcements from our sponsors. Once again, we thank you all for tuning into NNV. Please make sure you share this particular feed that's going on right now. And also leave your thoughts in the comment section below, and we'll be right back when I have a testimony.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Worldwide, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Download the Final Call Radio app and take us everywhere. On your phone, on your computer, on your tablet, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also log on to finalcall.com and click the Listen Live button, or finalcallradio.com. Final Call Radio, the official voice of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam.
Please share your thoughts with us in the comment section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel at National Network View. I am Anissa Muhammad with nnvnews.com.
Last week, we were blessed to hear student minister Troy Muhammad share how the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's words shared during the TV interview impacted he and the other men who were incarcerated with him, and in a way that they were not accustomed to.
It comes points of the day where, things happen, or, things get quiet. And if something is quiet, that means something good is on television, usually some video with women in it or something like that. So everybody's glued to their TV. This time it got quiet, but the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan was on the Donahue show. And he had the attention of everybody on that unit, which was about 50 guys. And it gave me the chance to see him for the very first time in person. I'd heard the name through Public Enemy records. And I had a friend, Brother Lamont, who had joined the Nation of Islam while he was in the Marines. And he had came back and mentioned the name to me, but I never had a face with the name. So when I was able to see him on Donahue, as a guy coming from the street with this tough mentality, where you use brawn and you use guns and you used other things to push and intimidate. I saw a man for the very first time control with just words.
Powerful, huh? He had a very powerful testimony. So when we're talking about the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, brother Jerald, what would you say? What are some of the ways that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan continues to have an impact on your personal life?
Wow. That's a powerful question, because I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a businessman, and I give all that credit to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Praise be to Allah for him. But the things that I've observed about the minister, Brother Willie, number one, when he told us to call ourselves students, the minister sees himself as a student. We didn't necessarily, I'll speak for myself, I didn't see myself as a student. So it was something new for many of us to call ourselves student minister. But the minister from day one has always said, what I am a student of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. No one told him to say that. That's just how he saw himself. So the minister is a good listener. And then when I've been at the palace and observed conversations, like I want to hear the minister talk, and I'm sitting there like this, and then some brothers are taking a long time to say something, and in my mind, would you be quiet? So I can hear the minister, but the minister sits there in earnest, listening with interest to the person. And a lot of times when I'm listening, what am I getting ready to say next? So the minister is a brilliant listener. So I'm realizing that I have to become a better listener, to the point where I've actually have gone to therapy to learn how to be a better listener, because I want that ear to listen like the minister. The minister is very, very patient, extremely patient. Sometimes we can be very impatient. I heard the minister say that everyone doesn't grow at the same rate, so sometimes as pastors or ministers or even as parents, our children don't always pick up things at the same rate of speed. So the minister's very patient. And third, I would say the minister has tremendous insight, that through his listening and seeing himself as a student, he has deeper insight on something that previously he had very little knowledge of. So just from listening with an ear and a heart to understand, he can give you more insight on your business or your craft or your skill. But, Allah, God gave him a heart like that. And I think many of us, we're going to have to work feverishly if we want to attempt to have a heart somewhat like his. It's going to take some work.
Yes, sir. And the title of this show is I Have a Testimony. And we created it for the purpose of helping to free the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in the minds of people's prison because of the false propaganda. And this social media is really helping that to be accomplished. But if you had the opportunity to stand before the world, you were on CNN or one of these international and national news agencies, what would be one thing about the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan you would testify of and you would want the world to know, and why that one thing?
Well, before I hit that, I want to encourage everyone to testify. You should have a backlog, because as I was reflecting on, Brother Willie, I think it's a sin, literally, biblically, Quranically. I see it as a sin not to testify. Because as I was thinking, in the white man's court system, you could be summoned. Because if you don't testify, it could cost somebody their life. But what I would say, the minister is a man of truth, and you may not like his delivery at times. You may not understand, but as the Bible says, when Jesus uses the words, if you don't understand my words, examine my works, for my works testify of me. Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's work testifies of him. If he didn't say anything else, just look at what he's produced. Young men and young women, not just across America, across the world. But you call him many things, but you cannot call him a liar. But all great men historically have been misunderstood. Brother Jerald always writes in Farrakhan the Traveler about how no leader had 100% participation. All leaders had detractors. That's part of the test and the trial that God has for his prophets and servants.
Promotional flyer that we use this image that's appeared on the screen of you and your family, and can you talk about that? How did this photograph take place, and what was the impact that it had on you? You see your wife and is one of your sons.
Yes. And my youngest son, Nadir, he's not in that photo. That was the day, and that's my oldest son, Jalil. Very proud of him. In fact, he is he himself is a police officer. So we were at the hotel. The minister's bus was there because he drove in from Chicago. Chicago is about a 4.5-hour drive from Louisville. So they were leaving. And as we were walking the minister down to the bus and escorting him out, he came and wanted to see my family. And he offered to take a picture. And if you see on that photo, the minister had a sweatsuit on. He was just relaxing. It was a beautiful thing. I'll never forget that day. You see my wife there, and I'm blessed that all my family believes and supports, and whatever the cause, whether it's making a financial sacrifice, a time sacrifice, I've had zero pushback from my wife, my children, anybody. If it's for the minister, if it's for the Nation of Islam, I've always been given 1,000% support, which has made some of the struggles of ministry a lot more easier, having such great support.
And how did your after that picture was taken, what was the spirit in the responses of your wife and your son?
Oh, it's just beautiful. My son, I wish I would have sent you the photo of my son, because my son actually got a picture with the minister before I saw him. I was almost a little jealous, because when the minister came in, I was somewhere else, and they got him up to the room, and my son, had stopped and got a picture, and the minister didn't even realize he was my son at the time. But a very, very proud moment. Story that comes to mind, I want to share the brilliance of the minister. Back to that hotel room the night before the memorial service, there was a discussion. I can't remember the topic, but the minister kind of looked towards me and he said, "Brother, when they're going to repair a house, when the foundation of a house is damaged, he said they first have to lift the house up before they repair the foundation. I said, wow, that's deep. I didn't realize that he may have saw something on me that I have to learn a better method in correcting people. You know, if my son does something or I feel like something needs to be corrected, you know, sometimes we want to take a sledgehammer and go directly to. But the minister said when they repair the foundation of the house, they lift that house up and then repair it. So what he was telling me, Brother Jerald, lift up your laborers first before you attempt to correct them. Lift up the people in your lecture. Lift them up before you correct them. That was a valuable lesson that I learned, that I was able to take that principle in business, build a sales team, to be able to provide income for my family, to create better relationships in the community, to understand that no matter how successful people are, people need encouragement. You know, and sometimes people think because I'm Willie Muhammad, you know, Mas 46, you know, brother, we all need encouragement, you know, because with this NNV News, I'm just so impressed by this. I've been interviewed. I did a interview for a documentary last week. They were leaving here and coming to Nashville, and it may be on Netflix here soon. And I was interviewed by the Discovery Channel, you know, 15 years ago, and they took a temporary insurance policy out where they were interviewing me at the mosque just while their equipment came in and they needed to know the address. And it was a big deal. But from what I'm seeing from this outlet, brother, this is top notch right here.
Thank you, then, and I'm sure those who are helping to make this network what it is will really appreciate that. And for those who are watching, that's why we would ask that you all hit the like buttons, hit the heart buttons, and it's not out of vanity, but this helps to increase the algorithms and things of that nature for people to tune in. And make sure you hit the subscribe button. And so we're coming upon our last break, so we're going to pause for these announcements to hear some from our sponsors. This is your Brother Willie Muhammad, and we're here with our dynamic guest, Brother Jerald Muhammad. We'll be right back.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps to combat false media. Cash App NNV News.
Greetings from National Network View. This week's Final Call cover story headline memorializes the late, great DMX. Last week, DMX's life was celebrated at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. Large crowds gathered to honor the legend. They were there to remember a man who wasn't afraid to express his pain with the world. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan spoke via Zoom to the large audience. He delivered words of comfort, wisdom, and guidance to everyone under the sound of his voice. DMX will live on. This FCM volume number 29 edition features the middle page article is a transcript of what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said at the memorial. To read more, subscribe to finalcalldigital.com and tune in to the all-new Final Call Radio. This is the nnvnews.com Final Call cover report.
He anointed our head with oil till our cup runneth over. He who, Master Farrakhan, Muhammad, that is he.
Ike August was one of the persons who shared what it was like to help the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan as he prepared for the concert performance, which was aired on the anniversary of the minister's birth last week.
But his sound, the type of sound quality, tone quality of his playing was so passionate and so truthful. You know, it was like the truth. See, people say, the kind of sound you make out of an instrument, string instrument, is the mirror of your soul. So you can't hide. But that is really the truth. I just heard love, and the truth. And I didn't even know what the minister was all about. I just heard the minister was the truth. A few days later, the minister called and asked me if I would consider teaching the minister the Beethoven Concerto. And I told him immediately, yes, of course I will help you. I will be honored to help you.
Wow, that was beautiful. And then when you see that performance, there's no way that that man can have malice and hatred and anti-Semitism in his heart to be able to produce such a beautiful sound like that. She said that. So you had the opportunity to see the performance. What were some takeaways that you observed from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan's performance?
From a general standpoint, I would say I've learned to appreciate classical music. You know, it's good music to soothe the soul. But the biggest thing that I learned specifically from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, which I shared earlier, is his approach. When he said that he told the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that basically he taught him how to play. And the messenger said, brother, you know, in words, I didn't teach you how to play, but the minister said he was dealing with, you know, the messenger giving him the mindset to approach any endeavor as the master of it and not to be intimidated by a process. But also it helped me to understand that there is no mystery God, that it took dedication, it took work. And while the minister was playing and practicing 8, 9, 10 hours a day, I see discipline, but he didn't stop serving his nation. He didn't stop teaching. He didn't stop speaking. He just disciplined himself, got up earlier, went to bed later. And that's an example for all of us. But then when she just said in that short clip that what comes through is the soul, there's truth. She saw a transparency in the minister's music that came through. So and just as I saw a conductor, I saw those people sitting behind him. It's showing me how the minister is actually a spiritual conductor. You know, and you see how sometimes they put their hand down and tell this side to kind of lower their instrument level and tell this side to come up. He's really teaching us how to do that. You know, say more of this, say less of that. So we have a master conductor in our midst in the person of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Beautiful, beautiful response, man. And I like those connections you were able to draw. You know, you also live in a city where our sister Breonna Taylor lost her life. And you have met and counseled with her family, even with her boyfriend at that time. Can you share with us about your work and your interaction with the family of Breonna Taylor and just with the overall cause to get her justice?
Well, first of all, our prayers and our thoughts are still with the family. Her mom, that's Sister Tamika Palmer, that I'm giving greetings. Before I met with her, I was communicating with Minister Ishmael through Minister Jeffrey in Chicago, and he basically, Brother Jeffrey, just shared with me to, you know, what to say to Sister Tamika Palmer, Breonna's mother. But I sent her love and greetings from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and from Minister Ishmael. I didn't do a lot of direct work with them. When they came, when some of the protests were coming, when Sister Tamika Mallory and others came, they asked the FOI to be part of the security. That was my initial contact. I went with many of our brothers from Louisville and Lexington that did the security for some of the dignitaries that came in. So I had a chance to, that photo there was Kenneth Walker. That's the fiance of Breonna Taylor that was in the apartment with her when she was shot. And that picture was taken in Frankfort, Kentucky at the state capitol. Prior to that, in that room was my son, the General, the rapper. Also Common, you know, artist Common, who introduced the minister. Common was there, and I was able to spend some time with Common. Jada Pinkett later came to the event. It was a tremendous outpouring of support for our sister, Breonna Taylor.
And how has the city been, post that? I know they're working with some legislation to ban no knock warrants,
Warrants, yeah,
stuff like that.
They got that passed. There has been some change, but we all know this is a national problem with the Black community. There have been some steps taken to make an improvement, but it also has created some division in the community in terms of some of the civil rights groups and some disagreements in approaches from some of the younger people who were new to protest. And at that time, we were quarantining, and we were in our chambers per the instructions of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So we weren't out there very much. And every time I went, I was so much trying to obey the minister that anytime I left my home, went to anything, I would text Brother Jeffrey and ask, is it okay? He said, because I didn't want to be out there saying something and doing something wrong. And at the time, the coronavirus, it was still, spreading like wildfire at the time. So it was a learning experience, going through that. The community here is still healing, behind that.
And you mentioned, it goes right into our last question. You mentioned about the coronavirus and us being shut in. What, reflecting back on this year and a half, approaching really like 2 years, what was some of the most profound lessons you have learned or are learning as it relates to this COVID shut-in?
Well, when the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said, go in your chambers, he lifted that scripture from the Bible. I believe it's in Isaiah. But what I learned is that the power of now, we have to be in the present. I learned that we have to reprioritize our lives. It made me realize what's important. It made me, just realize life is a precious thing. And I think it was the uncertainty that brings the anxiety. Human beings, we're creatures of habit, and we like regiment. We like to know what's coming tomorrow. So I learned to pray a little bit more. I learned just to take some me time. I started reading more than I ever have in my life. I read more books in a short period of time when we were really in quarantine. But I learned to really just take self-care. And I noticed that I was having trouble sitting still. And as I observed some of my colleagues in religion, that some pastors didn't know what to do when the church was closed. Some of us didn't know what to do when the mosque was closed. And what I looked at, I shared this with someone yesterday, it was as though God gave the church, the mosque, the cathedral, and the synagogue 1 year F time, where he closed every house of God. Because each one of us have violated the law of God, and God wanted all of us to quarantine, and Allah, God gave us all a year out. Catholics, Muslims, Baptists, Christian, whoever, none of us could go. And God wanted us to take that time and self-reflect. And for us to have not taken full advantage of that time to come through something like this and to be the same is really, really a tremendous waste. So I would just suggest, as I'm doing, reevaluate what lessons we learned during this short period of time, and then pledge to ourselves and to our family to make the necessary adjustments in our lives.
Yes, sir. We appreciate that. And I'll close with this question. I know there was several questions that I ask, and I always, when I do these interviews, I always ask myself, man, was there a question that I should have asked that I didn't, that could have brought out even more responses from the guests? So was there anything or is there anything you would like to share or you wanted to share, but you didn't have the opportunity to do it because I didn't ask that question that would bring that response out of you?
No, Brother Willie, I appreciate what you do, and what you do is very healing, and it's creating, in my opinion, a modern day hadith. I would just like to close from the powerful phrase, accept your own and be yourself. I'm learning that's a general collective statement, but it's also a specific statement. I'm learning to accept Jerald and be Jerald. You know, the minister shared recently at a ministry meeting in Chicago, he talked about basically being the best version of you. That's what perfection is. Perfection doesn't mean that I'm not going to make mistakes or errors, but perfection is me being the best version of myself that I can be. So, you know, it's okay for me to admire and look at other people and appreciate what they do, but I have to be more authentic and be myself. And once we can learn to be authentic, then we're on the verge of becoming individual great people that Allah God has destined for us to be.
Wow. Very, very profound. Well, we thank you, brother, and may Allah continue to bless you, your family, and the believers there in Louisville, Kentucky, man. You shared so much, and we appreciate you for accepting our invitation and sharing what you did.
Thank you so much for having me on the show, and I want to thank NNV Studios. It's been an honor and a great experience. Thank you all so much.
Make sure you subscribe to us, man. Hit that subscribe button and ask everybody else in your city to do so as well.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And for those of us who are still watching, you know, as we get ready to close, we close out with these announcements. We're still in this drive to pay off our mosque mortgage here in the city of New Orleans. So please send whatever you have and send this link or send this flyer to somebody who loves the nation and wants to see us to be free and wants to help. Please do so, and we will greatly appreciate it. In addition to that, we still have our prayer line. And Allah willing, we're going to be announcing another outreach effort that we're going to be doing here in the city of New Orleans. But if there's anybody that needs us to pray for themselves personally or their family and their friends, please do so, brothers and sisters. Submit their name, submit your name, so we can actually pray for you all during this time and even after this COVID thing stops. And so, dear family, we thank you all for joining us today and tuning into I Have a Testimony. Please share your thoughts. We are interested in hearing what you gain from watching these interviews. So please share it in the comments section below. Follow us on social media at NNV News, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're close to 1,000 subscribers now, about 40, I think. So go and help us to hit that 1,000 mark as we continue to increase and build more. So the YouTube channel is National Network View. So this is your Brother Willie Muhammad with I Have a Testimony. Peace.
God came to us to seek and to save that which was lost. He raised a man from among us.
He, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, laid the foundation. What I'm doing is something that comes from him through me, and the thing that he uses in me to do the work is my faith in him and the word that he taught. To produce men and women who wanted to clean up their life and build an independent nation for the glory of God.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps to combat false media. Cash App NNV News.